intervention. So that's really, really good point. We would like to entertain the most 3 questions, unless you don't want to have lunch. 3 questions.
Hello, my name is Richard Wagner, and I come from the practitioner perspective of intervention models and evidence-based treatment. And I guess my question goes to, from reading the paper that was parallel to this, there was, I guess, in terms of the ongoing improvement processes, I think that was something that was mentioned towards your conclusion. And I'm just wondering, what were the deficits that you identified in the implementation of the model, and what was it that suggested, oh, we need to improve on this in your program?
So a couple of, it's so great that you read the paper. It's like a prepared group. So in terms of the deficits around the implementation supports, so the drivers analysis does play a big role with that. We probably have to see the assessment tool to maybe more clearly understand how it works. But so each of the drivers has a set of best practices associated with them. And so we measure the presence or absence of each of those best practices and then develop these kind of overall composite scores. And from that, we do action planning. But the whole piece around the model, the program improvement piece, is actually larger than that. So they're looking at fidelity scores and outputs and outcomes and stakeholder information and coaching satisfaction data, other performance assessment information. So what we've done, it speaks to the sustainability of the teams, is that teaming structure I showed you, that complicated teaming structure really only lasted through exploration and parts of installation. After we started to launch services, and you can imagine we didn't launch them all at the same time. They were kind of tiered in terms of their rollout. What's happened now is it's morphed into more of a streamlined team that has representatives from all those different areas, but because they all have general competency around implementation, they all kind of sit together, and they've renamed themselves what they call a program review team. And that data, that team is the team that takes in data every month. And there's a set of variables that they look at that we established, and that's changed. Because you can imagine what we thought was important to look at wasn't really that important, or we had too much information. And we established a set of questions that team asks every single month about what they're seeing in the data. And then there's all these prompts around the intervention and the implementation supports. And the team comes together and they answer that set of questions. And now for some of the interventions, it's quarterly, not monthly, because now we're like 5 years in. And then that information, there's protocols set up about linking in data to that team and then linking information out from that team. So if they feel like changes have to be made at different levels of the system, or they need to explore other recommendations, because what they're seeing is maybe implementation drift or things like that from the data that they're looking at, the questions that they're answering each month or each quarter, that information then gets fed to other folks based on this protocol. And it's all dependent upon position, not person. So the way that the frameworks are set up are to help inoculate us against things like staff turnover or the idea that the implementation is person dependent or passion dependent. It's really about institutionalizing change. So looking at this data has become part of people's job descriptions. So so selection driver has actually completely changed. Now this takes years to do in some ways, by the way, but a lot of these initial changes have happened over these years. So now it's just part of someone's job that there's certain data that they always look at, not because there's some people that don't like to look at data, or if they moved into that position, wouldn't want to come to those meetings. But that's how they operate now. So all of those drivers have become institutionalized across all of their services. Is that helpful? Not really. I got like this, like it's not so helpful. Okay.
Yeah, I guess my question was more related to some of the specifics, the nitty-gritty, quote-unquote, drivers that needed to be modified from the implementation? For instance, what were the specific, I guess, problems, challenges?
Yeah, so I'll just like think with the success coach from the very beginning, some of the really specific challenges we faced is that we weren't meeting best practices for a decision support data system. So we had some technology in place, but we were the data we were collecting wasn't being shared in a timely way. We weren't, so weren't transparent processes. We hadn't actually figured out what data would be really actionable, so folks didn't think that the variables we had chosen were good variables at that point. Facilitated administration, there were certain policy practice misalignment issues at the agency that were making it so that to go out and do the kind of home visiting, it was hard just due to some of the policies they had. And so from a facilitated administrative standpoint, we definitely had some management practice issues that weren't being met. From a coaching perspective, we were pretty strong on that. From a training perspective, much weaker. We weren't doing best practices. We didn't have a pre-post assessment around training from the beginning. We weren't really able to train to a certain set of criteria. This all makes complete sense, by the way, because the success coach was a homegrown model. So you would never expect, manualized interventions, manualized training models, and 10-point Fidelity checklists take like a decade, to do that kind of work. We were at this point like 15 months in to a project, so we were much stronger on selection, because we had full control over that, on coaching, putting the coaching piece in place. And I feel like that was kind of compensating in the beginning for some of the weaker drivers, but not enough. Not enough that we still ended up with pretty low fidelity. We also had, there's also some skill issues too, so there's probably some selection issues as well that did happen, although that was one of the stronger drivers. So there was very particular pieces that emerged from that driver's assessment that they knew that they had to work on. So training is, they have a training manual now and everything. They didn't have that at the initial driver's assessment. Is that?
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So let's give, yeah, no, wait, one more question or?
I think it's right.
No, one more question? Okay. Dr. Bergman.
Yeah, Rosalind Wilk from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. Not so much a question, but a comment
Yeah.
to put on the list of things we should talk about. This notion, and I understand where it comes from, the top-down versus bottom-up approach. I think it's, I don't want to put myself out there, I think it's a false dichotomy. And it has to do with where you conceptualize practice happening, whether it's happening privately or where most of social work practice happens, which is in agencies. And I just think it's worth some discussion.
I just wanted, Rosalind, I want to say I'm so happy you said that, because that actually did feel a little weird for me, that dichotomy, when I looked at it on there, because I think our active implementation frameworks actually pride themselves on being both bottom-up and top-down, because it's a systems perspective. So it was all those practitioners that sat on those teams during exploration phase. They actually chose the interventions, or helped to develop the interventions or adapt the interventions. So it was really an intersection of research and practice. And watching them kind of present their choices to the Duke endowment was an amazing piece, I guess, in my professional life, to see practitioners that were heard by a funder and actually able to move forward with those choices with support of a funder. So I realized that wasn't the dichotomy that Bruce was going for up there, but the words felt weird to me because of the way that we do our work. So I'm so happy you said that. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much for all the questions. And just to summarize what we just heard in 2 points. One is the first approach of making it happen is very important. And also the long-term assessment that come with the team, come with the intervention group would be also something that we do need to consider. And of course, finally, let's go back to this whole issue, because if we have to give them, another round of applause. So how many hope would you give? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so thank you very much for it.
Okay, let's go ahead. I know we're a little bit off schedule, so thanks for being patient with us. I do want to pose another question. on top of Dr. Bertram's question, and that is, if we are using implementation frameworks to implement interventions we're choosing at an organizational level, how do we take care of those individual variations within our clients where things may not fit? So I think that was part of the point, is this variation in terms of culture and diversity and treating everybody the same way. So I hope we can continue this discussion. We're breaking for lunch. I'd like to thank all of our wonderful speakers here today. We're going to give them all a special pen.